Hi, everyone. Welcome to our first ever Century 21 podcast called Property Done Properly. My name's Andrew. I'm head of business development for Century 21 UK. And I'm delighted to introduce Stuart Moore, our UK sales manager from KPR. KPR provide us with a number of services. And I thought, as a lot of our business is rentals, then we would start with introducing Stuart. So hi, Stuart. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, Andrew. Thanks for inviting us on. So it's my first podcast appearance. So
Me too.
Looking forward to it. The nerves are always a good thing, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something different to do. So let's see how we get on and
exactly push ourselves outside the comfort zone, as it were.
Definitely. So firstly, I think probably what's on a lot of people's minds is how would you describe the current rental market conditions in the UK?
Well, I mean, in a nutshell, it's a basic supply and demand issue, isn't it? There is a shortage of rented stock within the private rented sector, and there's a mass of demand. And interestingly enough, and it couldn't have been timed any more to perfection, but I saw a post this morning, which is rental demand and supply don't match, and it shows a 4 weeks to the 11th of June this year versus a 5-year average, and across the UK, so in the northeast, for instance, supply is 42% down versus a 56% increase in demand. Wow. It's just showing you the gulf. And as I go down through the list, you've got Wales is 32% down, 66% up. Southeast, 32% and 53%. Northwest, 27% down, 45% up on demand. There is only one region which is in a positive for supply, and that is the East Midlands, which is 4% up, but it might be 4% up on supply, but it's 54% up on demand.
Wow.
So it's just highlighting that there is a really, really big shortage. And, if you look at cities like London, they've seen a decrease in available property stock by up to 50%. But in the same time, tenants have seen rises in their rent by up to 17%. So it's just going to show that supply and demand issue. And also the problem that you find with the rents increasing to such levels is it's then becoming unaffordable for the tenants, isn't it? Tenants are struggling to pay their rents. And I think I saw within London, on average, people spend 40% of their salary on rent.
Wow.
And then couple that with the cost of living and everything else that goes with it, it just shows what a crucial time it is for the housing sector. But then you look on the other side of things from the landlord's perspective, and my personal opinion when we look at the sector is landlords are demonized. They are really seen as the cause for the issue in the sector, and they're penalised, whether it's from the scrapping of the interest relief on your mortgage payments and not being able to offset it against the rent received. I mean, obviously they do get elements still of tax relief, but it's by nowhere the same levels that they've seen. And when you look at the court backlog, obviously there was that from the COVID times, but when you're looking at the amount of backlog that there is in the court system for landlords that haven't been paid rent for upwards of sort of 2 years, and they're still sat with a tenant in situ in the property and they just can't get them out, it's not really a wonder that you're finding landlords go, I've had enough of this. I'm going to hold my hands up. I'm just going to sell up and get out of the scenario. So it's a challenging time, but I think it's a crucial time for agents that can help set themselves apart by, like you rightly said, using tech and finding those cutting edges and making themselves stand out from the crowd, especially within a time where there is a shortage of stock from that side of things. There is a shortage of stock, so as agents, we need to do more to ensure that we're the ones that are winning the stock that kind of is out there, from the personal business side of things, and by using tech and innovating, that is how you set yourself apart from everyone else. That's the be all and end all with it, I think.
I think one of probably the biggest areas is the compliance that's involved in making sure properties okay to be launched into the rental market. So what would you say the importance of monitoring that is? And
it's a funny one. Whenever you use the term compliance, and whether it's sales or rentals, I think everybody's initial mindset will always go to anti-money laundering. That's what everyone initially thinks about from compliance, rather than looking at the things that you need, like say from a rental perspective. So, needing the EPC, needing your gas safety certificate, needing your EICR every 5 years. It's HMO licensing, selective licensing from the local authorities. And then you look at the legislation side of things, your smoke and your CO detector compliance, the Fit for Human Habitation Act, which is a crucially important piece of legislation. And obviously with the awful incident in Rochdale that came to light last year, and the spotlight kind of being shone even more on that, it's more crucial than ever to be, ensuring that you're taking every reasonable step to ensure that your landlords are protected, your tenants are protected, but also you as an agent are protected.
Of course.
So making sure you're tracking these things it's imperative. It really is.
So I speak to quite a few of the offices, and one of the things they talk about is inspections, and obviously they're highly important when it comes to a tenant moving out and claiming, going to claim off their deposit, etc. So what would you say would be the top do's and don'ts for carrying out an inspection on a property?
I mean, the number one do is do them. You'd be surprised how many, whether it's a self-managing landlord or even, agents. I speak to agents on a daily basis that aren't using any tech. They're saying, since the pandemic, they've got behind on their inspections and they haven't managed to do them. And you just look at it and go, right, well, from a standpoint of your contractual obligation to your landlord, I would imagine in most agencies, terms of business, they will say they will visit a property. Pre-pandemic, most agents tried to visit 4 times a year. Obviously, pandemic, it became illegal to enter a tenant's property, so they found themselves in that awkward position. And now post-pandemic, I think on average people probably go 6 monthly, so they'll do 2 inspections a year. And that's kind of the bare minimum. But the important thing when you're doing the inspections, and going back to the kind of do's, is I see a lot of people when they do inspections take hundreds of photos. Now, when you're doing an inventory on a property, you want to evidence and show everything that you possibly can. But when it comes to a midterm inspection, really what they are, in my view, designed to be is you're looking for issues. So you're not going to go back into the property when you're doing your inspection and take a whole host of photos. You're not going to go, right, well, this is the lounge, this is the kitchen, this is the bathroom, etc., etc. You're going to literally look for any issues that will arise through that inspection. So, there's a dent on the wall there, that wasn't there when they moved in, we'll evidence that, etc. And that helps you start building that audit trail. But one of the biggest things that you're going to get out of doing inspections is you're going to help to identify maintenance or repair potential issues before they become big issues. You just look at mold and damp. Mold and damp being, probably the number one maintenance issue that is reported by tenants, especially during the winter months. And I'm sure your franchisees, will probably find that. Now, more often than not, when it comes to mold and damp, it's probably black spore mold because they're not ventilating the property. They've closed their trickle vents on their windows because it's cold in the winter. They haven't got the heating on, or they're drying clothes on, an area by the radiator and thinking, oh, that'll do the job, but they're not ventilating the room. So moisture has nowhere to go, so it obviously manifests. But there are times where obviously it isn't that. And by doing your inspections, you can pick up on, actually, there's a little bit of damp coming through there. You take your photo of it. With our software and the FFHH side of things, there are questions that relate specifically to all 9 categories of fit for human habitation. So the minute you indicate that there's evidence of mold or damp in the property, the app and Willis, the software, will prompt you to raise a maintenance issue relating to that. So ensuring that you're tagging and just spotting issues. So definitely do not find yourself in a position where you're taking 400 or 500 photos on a midterm. It's going to take you too long.
Yeah.
And there's just no need for it. A midterm should be 15, 20 minutes, you're in, you're out, and the report's, ready to go. That's the biggest thing when it comes to the inspections. So definitely do them. But be, choosy with your photo choice. So only taking the photos of the issues that you're identifying, and that's the biggest thing that you can get out of doing inspections. Don't make it a war and peace kind of scenario. and definitely do use tech, because the amount of agents that would still, and like I say, on a daily basis, I had one last week, and they track their inspections via an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah.
They then go to the property, they'll get their camera, they'll take their photos, they'll write their notes, and then they'll go back to the office, and then they'll type it up into a web document, and they find themselves taking 2 hours to do one midterm. Well, by using tech, from the point of walking into the property to the report being ready to send, is 20 minutes.
Fantastic.
Not to mention on the apps and everything, the questions are already there. You don't have to think about the type of thing that you're looking for. It's all in black and white on the screens. Questions are there, whether it's the testing the smoke and CO detectors and recording expiry dates and locations and things. So help yourself out by having that tech in place endlessly.
Just on a side from that, how do we legally stand with a tenant that won't give us access into a property to carry out an inspection, whether that be a 6-monthly or a midterm?
It's a tough one, isn't it? Now, obviously, within most ASTs, there will be, the clause in there that says that we can enter the property with the management set keys if we give, minimum of 24 hours notice. And there's kind of different ways. It is a very much a grey area, isn't it? From the standpoint of legislation, I can't remember the exact legal term of this. But there are legal terms which associate with gaining access into the property with, written notice of the required amount of time and using a management set of keys. It does become a tricky situation when tenants refuse access, because if you were to speak to solicitors, you'll probably find 2 different answers. You've got one that says, from a legal standpoint, it's in your tenancy agreement and you can use this, and that is how you can go into the property. And then you'll find another solicitor that goes, well, no, the tenants refused access. They are legally, responsible, and 4 walls, it's their domain. And if they say that you can't go in, you can't go in. So from an agent standpoint, yes, it becomes a very tricky situation, but all you can do is prove your due diligence. So you can show an evidence that you have tried to book your inspection, you've tried to gain access to the property, and the tenant is refusing access. And I think if I think back to my time as a letting agent, when I was talking to tenants that didn't want us to do inspections, I would always go down the lines of the reason that we're doing these inspections is not to try and catch you out, Mr. Tenant. It's actually to help you and protect you, because what I'm looking for when I come round is evidence of any potential maintenance issues that might be arising. Now, if I was to identify a maintenance issue, I'm sure you would want me to fix that, wouldn't you? And it's trying to get them to buy into it sort of that way. But it is
a bit of reverse psychology.
you can but try, can't you? But most agents don't have an issue with the going into properties with the required notice. Yes, you get some tenants that say they want to be present. Absolutely fine. But there are those occasions where you do get them that refuse access, and it does become a much trickier scenario. So proving your due diligence, and whether that's down to refusing access for gas safety, refusing access to do the EICR. From a legal point, you need to have them. But if the tenant refuses access, all you can do is, like I say, have that evidence trail showing that you tried to get access. So if the local authority do come banging, you can say, we have tried, we are doing this, and this is what we're trying to do to resolve the issue. And as long as you've got that evidence trail, they're a little bit more receptive to it. It's when there's absolutely nothing and you've just got gas a Jew that they definitely look a little bit more on the bad side, shall we say.
Yeah, I think another important part over the last few weeks have had cases where agents, some of our offices and agents that I know personally have had to give notice to tenants, and it's fallen a little bit flat when it's gone to court, and probably on the most important thing, and that is what we are legally required to give a tenant on move-in day. So again, what are those things? What would you expect as a tenant by law to get from the letting agent?
Yeah, so from the tenant's perspective, you need to make sure that you're serving them the latest how to rent guide from government. Yep. Obviously, the government are very good at updating the how to rent guide, but not necessarily shouting about that.
Yeah, I think we've had that a few times.
So you've got to make sure you've got the most up-to-date version of the how to rent guide is served to the tenant at all times. So especially on the move-in day, you need the details of the deposit scheme, where the deposit is being lodged, any relevant contact details. So if it's a managed property, you need to have obviously your office contact details and who to speak to in there. If it's a tenant find and the landlord is going to be managing the property, make sure that they've got the landlord's contact details, copy of the EPC, copy of the gas safety, copy of the EICR, obviously keys.
Yeah.
Being the number one thing. And then obviously have to make sure that they get a copy of the deposit certificate within 30 days of the tenancy starting. So all of that information needs to be served with the tenant in order that you can serve a Section 21 whilst it still is in existence now. And obviously that includes the annual. So when you next do your gas safety the following year, you have to make sure that the tenant receives it. You have to make sure it's served to them, because like say, if you find yourself in this position where you're taking your tenant to court, your Section 21 is going to get kicked out if you cannot evidence that you have given them all of these bits of information. So it's crucial that you do. It really is.
Okay, and I think that goes back to the beginning when we were talking about landlords, and that is that from time to time we come across landlords that say don't believe us. That's probably not the right thing to say, but they don't understand the necessity of things like EICRs and gas safeties and so on and so forth. What do you think, if you were if that was a difficult landlord you were dealing with, what would you do in order to try and get them to understand, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very strange one, isn't it? I mean, I've done a number of landlord events. And it's amazing how many private landlords used to walk into the letting agents that I worked in, and they kind of hold their hands up and say, look, I can't deal with the stress anymore. Here's the keys, please, manage the property, let the property. And you go, right, okay, where's the EPC? EPC? I don't know anyone did an EPC. I've had the property let out for 20 years. Okay, yeah. Well, it became a requirement that you have to have an EPC, on the. Oh, I didn't know that. Or where's your gas safeties? Oh, I haven't got any. Now, the ones that are approaching you on that side of things, it's easy to say that, and this is the reason that you're approaching us, is because we know all of the 462 pieces of legislation that are kind of out there. It is a minefield, but there is that basic information that even self-managing landlords should be aware of. Where it becomes a very awkward situation is when you get those landlords that you're renting their property, but and I don't think it's, especially when you're managing a landlord's property, I don't see it. I personally didn't come across them going, right, well, I don't want to get gas safety done. I don't want to get the EPC done. I don't want to get. That wasn't the issue. I think the problem that you have with landlords is, and this goes back to the very start. Obviously, they're being pinched, though they're not making as much money or able to offset as much of the expenditure that they have. So a lot of them can be very reluctant to spend money.
Yeah.
And I get that side of things, but the problem is when what they're asking, or what you're asking, or what's been identified is, due to legislation, the landlord kind of has no choice, and it does become a very, very tricky situation when you're trying to advise your landlord that you need to do this, because if we do not look at the mold and damp side of things again, if we do not rectify that mold and damp issue, your property is non-compliant for fit for human habitation. That is leading open to a potential fine and prosecution under the Act. Now, when a landlord still refuses, you've got a very tricky situation that you find yourself in as an agent, because you don't want to you don't want to lose business, but equally, you know that as an agent, if a landlord is refusing to do things to the property, what's the tenant going to do? The tenant is going to, give notice, but they're going to leave a bad review. But the review and anything that is going to come is going to be negative towards you as the agent, because they see it as your fault. It's not your fault, but you're representing the landlord, and therefore that's where the tenant kind of goes on that side of things. So I remember many times where I had to end associations with landlords.
Yeah.
Whether it was refusal to rent to particular criteria. You'd be surprised how many times you kind of get that, and obviously it's abhorrent and it shouldn't happen, but it does. And then you get situations where landlords repeatedly refuse to do maintenance issues or spend money. And when you've evidenced that you've had these conversations, you've shown them the evidence, this is why you need to spend the money, Mr. Landlord, this is the piece of legislation that it relates to, you kind of get to a position where you have no choice but to end the business relationship, because it's going to be detrimental to you in the long run, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, some people would look at that and go, well, but what you're doing is ending the association, but you're not helping the tenant at all. You're kind of making it someone else's issue. But what you'll find is you'll end the business association with that landlord. Landlord will go to the next agent and say, I want you to do it. And then all of a sudden you see that the landlord's fixed those issues because the agent said, oh, you need to do this in order for us to do that. And yes, you've lost that managed property, but the end result tends to be that the tenant is happy. And ultimately, the advice that I had given some tenants previously was, look, we've tried with the landlord, we've tried to get them to do this, they're refusing, they're not going to do it. The best thing I can suggest to you is, if you're not happy with that, is make a report to the local council. Mm-hmm. Report it saying that the landlord's refusing to do it. Obviously, that the ombudsman and things that Michael Gove announced, that needs to be the first step, because obviously everybody has the right to live in a property that's fit and proper.
Yeah,
absolutely. So, and push comes to shove, Mr. Tenant, give notice and find yourself another property. But you kind of want to do everything you can to avoid that situation. But it's a tricky one.
Well, that being said, I think there's some, across the UK, there's some excellent landlords and excellent tenants that do take care and look after properties, and it's a good thing that we do have these regulations in place to keep us in check, as well as landlords and tenants alike. So
exactly. It's as with everything. It's the few that spoil it for the masses, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's it. And that goes on the letting agent side of things as well, isn't it? When you see the case of a letting agent taking off with deposits and not registering them, and moving to Barbuda and things. It's the few that spoil it for the masses. So the regulations on things, yes, it is heavy, but it's a necessity.
Yeah,
you have to have it, and that's why the biggest piece of advice you can give to anybody is to use an agent. That whether it's a property market agent or not, but someone that is professional. They do the job day in, day out. They understand what you need to buy with what you need to have. And that's the biggest piece of advice I can give to anybody is use an agent. It really is.
Fantastic.
I wouldn't want to manage a property on my own, that's for sure.
I don't think I would.
I wouldn't want that stress.
Stuart, it's been really great having you on the podcast. I want to thank you for your time. I know you're a very, very busy gentleman working with our offices and lots of other clients. So thank you for being part of Century 21's first ever podcast. Wow. And I'm sure we'll have you on again for some other tips and understanding of regulations. So have a great day. Thank you very much.
Cheers, Andrew. Take care.
Cheers.